Okay, doing your IFTA is so super easy. I was very surprised when I first got my authority, and every time I found somebody, I'd stop at a receiver or shipper, and I try to talk to everybody who had their authority and see how they were doing things and if I was doing things right and the best way to do things. And every single person I asked about filing IFTA said they didn't want to mess with it. They'd pay somebody to do it. And at first, it had me kind of worried. Now, it was a pain in the butt to begin with because in Texas, I filed to get my IFTA sticker, and it took months and months and months and months. I think over 6 months, if I remember correctly. And so when I tried to get into IFTA, I didn't have an IFTA number, and it wouldn't allow me to log in. So there's going to be a couple of things you will need, and you'll need your taxpayer ID and your IFTA number. So I finally tracked down which the taxpayer ID I needed for Texas, and then I was able to get in the system. But then I did not have an IFTA number, and there was a tab in there that said, if you've never filed before, go here. And it sent me in paperwork through snail mail with basically all the forms you need to file IFTA by mail if you wanted to do it that way. But on those forms, it had my IFTA ID that I needed to enter into the website. So those two things, getting that to that point was kind of a pain in the butt. But after you get to that point and you get in there, and let me show you real quick the website that you go to. That's another mystery. It's the Texas Comptroller. You can probably type in Google, Texas IFTA, and go to a government site, .gov. Don't go to those other sites. They look like government sites, but it's just people trying to scam you. And you go in there, and at first you don't know what you're looking at because it doesn't have a tab that says, oh, do your IFTA taxes here. So I believe it has a tab called Assign Taxes. So after searching around for it, I hit Assign Taxes and finally found my way through there. That, starting off with anything is a pain in the butt. The learning curve, that's the pain. So you need your tax ID, they'll send you your IFTA ID. Once you get in there, and I'll show you the page here once I get in there and get it all done. But like I said, I couldn't find a single owner operator with their own authority that did their own. So, for a while there, I was like, oh man, this must be a pain in the butt. Once you get in there, and the only other things you will need are your miles, which you get from your ELD that you traveled in every state during that quarter. And for me, I use a TCS fuel card, and they sent me this report, which has a little pie chart of all where you buy the fuel, but it tells me how much I spent and how many gallons I bought in each state. So you'll need how many gallons you bought in each state and how many miles you've driven in each state. If you have those two things and your IDs, your tax IDs and IFTA ID, that's all you need to file this IFTA. It's so super easy. Why pay somebody? Because if you hire a service, they're going to ask you what's your tax ID, your IFTA ID, and every quarter they're going to ask you what miles did you drive and how many gallons did you purchase. Well, if they need all that information, you're just adding somebody into the process that doesn't need to be there, and you're spending money. All you have to do is go to this website. It takes maybe 10 minutes to enter this information. Very easy, and right there it'll tell you how much you owe, or if you get a refund. And also, once it tabulates all the miles and the gallons and where the taxes were highest, and anyway, it does goes through all that for you. It'll tell you how much you owe. You hit continue, and you can pay it right there in just a couple of seconds, also with a credit card. So super easy. Don't hire somebody to do that part for you, because there's no complicated procedure. There's no misleading information. It's all straightforward. All right. So this is how easy it is. Once you get in there, you just go in and enter each state that you traveled in, how many total miles you traveled, how many taxable miles, how much fuel you purchased in each state, and then you hit next, and boom, it tells you how much you owe or how big of a refund you're going to get back. So it's that simple. One last thing, keep it simple. I try to keep everything simple. If you don't have to add any complicated procedure, if you don't have to add another person in the process, just try to keep it simple. So I use a Keep Trucking ELD, which keeps track of my miles I drive in each state. And I use a TCS fuel card, which keeps track of the gallons I purchase in every state. Now, Keep Trucking has a little procedure you can go through where every single time you fuel, you can take a picture of the receipt or you can enter it manually. And by doing that, it'll at the end of the quarter, it'll tell you, how many gallons you purchased in each state. But I think that's totally useless to stop. Let's see. I had 40 times that I got fuel in the past 3 months. So 40 times I would have had to stop what I was doing, try to take a picture of a receipt, which isn't going to work half the time, or and manually enter that into that Keep Trucking app. When all I need to do, even if you pay cash, you get a Manila envelope, and every time you fuel, you put that in the Manila envelope. You write down how many gallons in which state. You can keep track of how much you paid on that also. But that's all you have to do, because at the end of the quarter, you've got to enter these numbers manually anyway. Entering those or taking pictures of those receipts or entering that stuff manually into Keep Trucking isn't going to help you in any way other than take more time out of your day. So just get an envelope. You got to have an envelope to keep all your receipts anyway. You should be doing that. But you keep your fuel receipts separate. And every time you have one, just enter how many gallons in which state and then at the end, you can tally it up at the end of the quarter. But like I said, doing that on the Keep Trucking is just a waste of time. You're adding in an extra step you don't need to add in, because when you go at the end of the quarter to the website to file your taxes, you've got to enter each state individually, manually at that point. It doesn't take any amount of time whatsoever, but don't make it complicated.